welcome to another one of our sessions on one source tax provision functionality. In this episode, I'm going to go through the valuation allowance automation functionality that exists within the software. Now, it's not one that a lot of people use simply because the valuation allowance is something that is fairly subjective. So you often have to take a look at the different parts of the deferreds to determine if you need to do a full valuation allowance or a partial valuation allowance. So this functionality I find works really well if you've got an entity that is in a perpetual loss position. So there's just no consideration around whether or not you have to do a valuation allowance. It's always in loss, so we have to value the deferreds. It uses the VA underscore code, and it will combine all codes beginning with VA. It looks at your after-tax temp difference codes, your NOL temp difference codes, and the pre-tax temp difference codes. So the default out of the system is to look at all of those individual pieces separately. So your three categories that I just mentioned, that's your separate attribute basis. There is also the ability to aggregate in two different ways. One is aggregating at the pre-tax basis, and the other one is aggregating post or after tax, where it combines all three components to give you a net value. Now, with each of the aggregated methods, you will need to go into your dataset administration area and put in a parameter value, and that will be your VA calc type, a parameter value of 2 if you're aggregating pre-tax, and a parameter value of 4 if you're aggregating post-tax. So where does this reside? Let's hop into the software. So I have a unit already that I have set up with the VA automation. So I'm just going to go into my area there. It is in your unit details screen under other. And actually, in this case, I actually have a parameter value of 4 on. So let me just go get rid of that parameter value. Just a second. I'm going to go back in here, and I am going to take my parameter value off. Let's just go down and find VA. So VA calc type, I have mine set up to post aggregate. So once I delete that, we'll be able to see the other options in the VA screen. So hopping back in, going back to my unit 170, selection of other. So if you are doing the separate aggregate basis, this is what will happen. You will come in, you'll enable your valuation allowance, and you will select what you want each of the different areas, what portion of it you want to be automated. Something very important to note, this works only for the federal adjustments. It does not work for state or the federal benefit of state. So you will have to do something separately for that. Also remember that if you are doing a filing group concept, you will only be able to automate, similar to the NOLs, you'll only be able to automate the valuation allowance at the parent in the filing group. Okay, so if I go back out, I actually have some reports that I already exported out so that you'll be able to see. Here's my separate attribute methodology. So if I've done the separate attribute, you will see that it's taken all of the, it still has a breakout by current or non-current. So it does it according to your type that you've designated the deferreds as. And it's done my after-tax temporary differences. I had a credit up here for 2.5 million. And this also takes into consideration your entire balance. So it also picks up valuation, does a valuation allowance on balance sheet only items as well. So you can see my pre-tax temporary differences and my after-tax. If I look at my deferreds, I've got $3.4 million ending balance on the total deferred provision, but that's offset by a balance sheet only adjustment to give me no ending balance in my deferreds. So my total VA is actually the 6,027,000. If I go over to the aggregated post-tax version, what you will see is that I have a one line item, and it's the after-tax tentative. So it is simply summing up everything that I have and putting that into a tax-affected line. If I had done this aggregated pre-tax, then it would do the same thing as well, aggregate them and then tax affect them. All right, so something that's very important to note when you're doing the valuation allowance automation, if you do a rollover of your data set from one year to the next, and you decide to compress or scrunch your deferreds where everything rolls to a beginning balance or some other designated class, what the system will do is cause a duplication because it's set up to only have the auto class work with the valuation allowance. So just something to be aware of, that when you roll over, you will need to come in and take a look at these balances, and you're going to need to delete within the software, you will need to delete the balances that you have to avoid duplication. Okay, so one last thing just to go through is that if you want to do this, if you've got many entities, of course, we don't want to go through the software and just go individually. So if you do have multiple entities, you can take care of the automation using your unit detail screen. If you export that out of the software, it's the pound unit tab, and you will simply go over to the valuation allowance area, put a Y to activate the valuation automation, and then you will put in your rates. So 1 for 100% or whatever that rate needs to be for the individual attributes. Hope you found this helpful. Look forward to seeing you in another session.